Welcome to the study. This is Brofessor Hemlock. Here today, I am going over the simplest Arcane Mage build. I did not want there to be any complications with playing this build. This is for anyone that is struggling with developing those higher level concepts. If you are kind of new to Arcane, if you're just getting started, maybe you're a player who was a fire mage previously and you are wanting to try out Arcane, but you do not want to swap Covenants yet. Or if you're someone who is new to the game and wants to play Arcane as your main spec, or an individual that may be struggling with developing the higher end concepts and very difficult builds with Arcane, I really wanted to make this to help you out specifically. So, kind of going on to this intro, I am playing on my alt mage who has very low renown and is not that geared at all and has terrible stat prioritization and does not have a DPS legendary. So I am using no legendary for this Mythic Plus dungeon. I will just simply be using my Triune Ward, which is my PvP legendary I have. So there will be no additional DPS bonus from my legendary effect. In addition to that, I do not have all those potencies unlocked. I will only be using a Discipline of the Grove. Conduit is my only potency option. Now, this is the build I would run if I were trying to use the least complicated way of playing Arcane. Crane is a great build, is very strong. I've mentioned it in other videos just on how strong it is, but I do think it starts to involve more complex gameplay, and that's not the intent of this video. The intent of this is to be as core introduction concepts as possible so you can get comfortable with playing Arcane in the easiest way possible. So if I did have my renown fully capped out, in my bottom potency slot, I would be using Magi's Brand, and then I would change depending on the week. So if it's Tyrannical week, I would swap over to that finesse side and I would use Naya's Burrs, which is the bottom little slot for her Soulbind. And then if it was Fortified week, I would be using Magi's Brand to get that potency bonus. Okay? And that would be how I would finish out my Naya build. For talent selection here, we are running the least complicated way of playing, which is using the Incanter's Flow and Enlightened build. In addition to that, I am using Slipstream instead of Shimmer. For people that are transitioning from Fire Mage, you can pick Shimmer. Shimmer is going to be easier to play with if you're used to playing with Shimmer. Slipstream will be easier for those who are more familiar with Arcane and used to using it as a mobility option. I would suggest getting used to playing with Slipstream. It is probably the most strong option overall, and especially as Night Fae, you want that mobility during your burst window if you are using your clear cast charges. Okay, so let's start the video here. Note my item level here is a 211 item level, and I am using the Triune Protector. Secondary stats are very wonky. For the most part, this alt is just using PvP gear. I am low. I mean, I've played this alt, only a handful of times. So we're taking this very, very small. Now, I'm going to be jumping around in this video. I'm going to start this off with the first boss. So this is after Pride here. I am simply building up my charges and spamming Arcane Blast. Now, once I have enough clearcast procs, so you can see me here using Slipstream to move, I get enough clearcast procs, I will then apply Touch of the Magi AP, and I will use my clearcast procs and Arcane Blast as much as I can throughout this. Since I am not using a legendary, very straightforward, I'm just going to barrage near the end, and very simple, very quick fight. We ended at 14.8k DPS in the first boss on Mists. Now, again, it's really straightforward. You're trying to use your clearcast missiles inside of your AP Touch of the Magi window, but you're also using Blast as well. Now, we're going to jump forward here a little bit more to the first pull, where I actually use a normal rotation. So I've got my primary target, Touch of the Magi, AP. I'm going to do 2 blasts into a barrage, orb, barrage, and then I'm going to use my clear cast proc if I got one, and then it's simply from here, AE spam into barrage, and then we're going to use shifting power whenever there is no tornadoes, or you can use shifting power directly after your AP window is over. And then we're just going back into the standard rotation of Arcane Explosion, Barrage, 4 Arcane Explosions, and Barrage. So right here, we ended with 1 AP, no Pride, and we pulled 7.2k DPS. Now, to kind of break that down a little bit slower, so I did not go in with any clear cast procs. I did not go in with anything except I just had my cooldowns available. We applied Touch of the Magi to a primary target. We cast Arcane Power, 2 Arcane Blasts, Barrage, Orb, Barrage. At that point, if there were not any tornadoes around me, I would have used Shifting Power into another Orb and into another Barrage. Of course, I did have tornadoes around me, so I just went into the basic rotation of 4 Arcane Explosions into a Barrage, 4 Arcane Explosions into a Barrage. Now, this is going to be something you're going to basically want to get a handle of using for any AP go. Again, Touch of the Magi, AP, 2 blasts, Barrage, Orb, Barrage, Shifting Power, Orb, Barrage, Arcane Explosion times 4, and Barrage. Very straightforward, a lot less complex than any other rotation, and it's going to make it feel real smooth. Now on to our next pull here. We are going into a pull where we have no cooldowns, okay? So one of the benefits of Night Fae is that you do have a lot nicer cooldown windows. Here, this is going to simply be a Touch of the Magi window. So we're looking at what I have available. Touch of the Magi, I have Orb, I don't have AP, and I don't have Shifting Power. So I'm going to select a target, Touch of the Magi, 2 little blasts, into a Barrage, into an Orb, into a Barrage again, and now right here, I've done my primary rotation. You guessed it, 4 Arcane Explosions into a Barrage, 4 Arcane Explosions into a Barrage. Very simple. You do not need to worry about using your clear cast procs for missiles. That can be a DPS increase on a low amount of targets. So if there are, 3 or less targets, it can be very effective to increase your DPS. And right here, we can kind of see on that pull, using a very simplified AoE rotation. I was not using, I'm not using a complex Karain build where I'm having to use swap targets a lot. I'm not using a Curian build. I'm just using a normal, easy-to-follow rotation. I still pulled 6.2k DPS. That is without a legendary or a second potency slot. Very strong still. 6.2k DPS that pull. So again, remember what we did on this pull. It was Touch of the Magi. There was 2 Arcane Blasts, Barrage, Orb, Barrage, and then just follow a simple 4 Arcane Explosions, Barrage, 4 Arcane Explosions, Barrage. You don't need to worry about your target selection. You don't need to worry about specific additional cooldown use or making sure you're selecting the best Touch of the Magi target. Really, just selecting any is going to be fine because we're not doing a whole bunch of funnel damage into that specific target like we would if we were Curian or trying to put out a bunch of damage specifically. We are just using a much more simplified version of that rotation. Now, as the pack dies here, we go into a Pride. Something with this build you can do is saving Pride or saving Evocation at the end of Pride. Since we are using Enlightened, you can hold Evocate if you're able to. Of course, it is just fine if you need to Evocate prior to the Pride. We do rely somewhat on our group damage to help kill the Pride. Kind of funny there. That guy literally just walked right in front of me to make sure I got hit by that pride. Okay. Now this next pull, this is going to be a Pride and Arcane power pull. So let's watch as what I'm going to do, right? Touch of the Magi, 2 blasts, and then we're going to use our traditional rotation. Let's see how effectively I pull this off. Now, if I don't have any tornadoes, I should be able to use shifting power directly after that last barrage. So Touch of the Magi, AP, 2 Arcane Blasts, Barrage, Orb, Barrage, Shifting Power, very good. Orb, Barrage again. Now it's simply the Arcane Explosion. And do that. Great. So that was a very good pull. We did our rotation exactly as we should. And we were able to pull out 12.4k DPS during that Pride. And that was a normal pack pull. It wasn't a double pack pull. It wasn't, something overly insane. We just used a normal cooldown, and we did a simple AoE rotation. Touch of the Magi, AP, 2 blasts, Barrage, Orb, Barrage, Shifting Power, Orb, Barrage. Very simple, easy to follow, and we don't have to worry about our target selection. Pick a mob, use it as best you can, and it's going to be able to effectively deal a very substantial amount of damage. Now we're going to cut here to our next pull, where I will not have AP up. Gotta love it when the tank is the one making the mistakes there. Now this is going to be a single target pull. So I barrage prior to using Touch of the Magi, since I'm not using Harmony or anything. Right now, I could use my Clearcast procs and probably should use them, but I wanted to save them for mobility with the tornadoes. But basically, all we're doing is utilizing our cooldowns. Something important to note here that you see me doing is I'm using shifting power when it's off cooldown and I'm in between cycling here. Always use shifting power. It's one of the greatest ways you can increase your DPS. Since we are using shifting or slipstream, I do use my Clearcast proc to move and adjust my positioning. Now, right here at the end of this pull, we did 3.3k DPS utilizing essentially no cooldowns. So very good. That is going to be just fine for this level of key. I did skip the Mistcaller fight here because it's a really long, boring fight that's pretty much exactly as that single target fight. And you can kind of see on the damage meters, I ended that single target fight at 3.3k DPS as well. So very straightforward. Single target, I ended exactly the same. Of course, I did get to use some AP and Pride buff during the Mistcaller fight, but with the downtime between her guessing game phases, you do lose some DPS. Okay. Now, skipping ahead to our next pulls here. This is going to be a 3-target cleave pull. I don't need to use any specific cooldowns here, so I am just going to Orb and then Arcane Explosion. This is a pack right here where you can use your Clearcast procs for missiles instead of Arcane Explosion. Since there are 3 mobs, missiles does a very high effective amount of damage. I use Orb and I Barrage. So right here, one of the things I am being aware of is I'm using Orb early enough to make sure I have Orb up for the next pull. So you do want to be aware of your cooldown cycles. I know I have AP up for the next pull. I know I've got Touch of the Magi. So I do want to make sure I have Orb available. Since it's on an 18-second cooldown, it is really short. And in this case, I know that these mobs at around 20%, I'm going to have the effective amount of time I need to get Orb back off cooldown for my next pack. Okay, we're going into the next pack here. I'm just selecting a big target. I'm going to Touch of the Magi, AP, 2 blasts, 1, 2, barrage, orb, barrage, shifting power, and then orb again, barrage again, and then arcane explosion. Very simple. We're just doing the exact same thing we would do on any other pack with or without AP. And then barrage. Right here, we ended that pull at 11.1k DPS before moving into this next pull, which just happened to chain pull, so the DPS meters did not specifically reset, but we ended that nice little AP go at 11.1k DPS. Very strong and very simple rotation to follow. Now this little gap pack here is actually kind of nice. It's going to make it so we can roll into the next pack having some of our cooldowns back up. We'll skip that pack. We're going to move forward to the next pack that essentially is in the same situation here, right? So I don't have AP, and I don't have Pride buff. So this is going to be a normal go without any major CDs. So we pick a target. Now right here I do make a small mistake. I should have Touch of the Magi first and saved my orb. So this is a little bit of a mistake on my end, but I left this pull in here because even though I made this mistake, right, I should have just opened with Touch of the Magi, Barrage, or Blast, Barrage, or Barrage. Even though I made this mistake, we're going to see how much this actually impacts my DPS. Touch of the Magi. I do that blast there because the tornado is going to hit me. And then I don't have orb, so it's just Arcane Explosion times 4, and then Barrage, and then, you guessed it, Shifting Power, Orb, Arcane Explosion to 4, and then Barrage. Now, since there's under 3 targets, I'm going to use those Clearcast procs for it, and right there, we still pull nearly 5k DPS, even though I made a small mistake on my cooldown cycle. So, compared to the previous pull, I did lose some DPS, but it wasn't really a super substantial amount. And that's kind of the flexibility of the build. You're still doing good damage pretty much in any situation, and that was with no real cooldowns. Going into the Pride now, we're going to simply spam Arcane Blast and use our clear casting procs. Always be aware of where the Pride is going to do its little AoE. I orb. Now, if I know I'm going into a single target boss fight after this, I do want to try and end this with clear casting procs available. Clear casting procs will do more damage than Arcane Blast during a Touch of the Magi window. So I'm going to try and end this Pride with as many clear casting procs as I can, which in this case looks like it's going to be 1 clear casting proc. But again, you do not need to min-max. The point of this build is just simply being able to play the build. I use Time Warp. I'm going to go into a Touch of the Magi AP go here. Touch of the Magi AP. We use our missiles, and then I'm just simply using Arcane Blast. At the end of my Touch of the Magi, I am using my Arcane Barrage, and then I go back into blast spamming. I have the Pride buff, I've got infinite mana. I'm going to use my Clear Cast for movement if I need. I'm going to use Shifting Power the second I can. That way I can essentially get back into more cooldown cycles. Right there, I was able to use Orb directly after my Shifting Power to generate charges. My Touch of the Magi came back off cooldown really fast because of that Shifting Power. So I'm just going to go. I'm just going to yeet my Touch of the Magi. And then I'm just going to spam Blast even if I don't have Clear Cast procs during this. And I use my missiles for movement. I barrage near the end. And then we just go back to finishing the boss off at this point. Right there, I do get the Slipstream glitch where I cast missiles with Slipstream available, and it essentially does not let me move. We end this boss at 5.8k DPS. Very clean, lots of good damage, and again, simpler rotations. Now we've reached the very end of the dungeon here, and we can see on the damage meters we were able to pull out 5.5k DPS. Not much complexity in our rotations. They're very the same across every single pull. Touch of the Magi, 2 Arcane Blasts, Barrage, Orb, Barrage, Shifting Power, Orb, Barrage. Every time, all the time, you're pretty much able to do that. And if you're not, you're still fine. Use Arcane Explosion ×4 into a Barrage, using your Orb when your Orb is off cooldown, and then barraging after. Shifting Power as much as you can whenever it's off CD. And that is going to be another important note. So right here, we're looking at my damage breakdown. Again, this was no legendary effect. We were not using a DPS legendary. So our damage breakdown is going to be wonky. Now, what I would suggest for this build as a legendary is I would suggest the Arcane Bombardment legendary. It is the Execute legendary. It is the most simple one to play with, and it is going to be a great introduction to how to do a bunch of damage. So essentially, when a mob is below that 35% barrier, you're going to use your barrage to do a bonus 130% damage, and that will make it feel really good and really smooth. So that is the legendary I would use for this build. We did a great amount of damage, 5.5k DPS with no legendary effect at a low item level, no second potency slot, a green Discipline of the Grove. So, and of course, terrible secondary stats. So overall, I was still able to do a lot of damage. The big things to note here, although the rotations are simple, you still need to think about your cooldowns. I'm using Shifting Power every time I can. I'm using Orb every time I can. And I essentially have Touch of the Magi up for every single pull. And I am just using Touch of the Magi, regardless of if I have Orb available or if I'm able to do the perfect rotation. You are just using those cooldowns. That's one of the benefits of Night Fae, and that is why I think Night Fae is the simplest build to play, is you are just using your cooldowns willy-nilly. It does not matter for the most part because you have them so often. Use those cooldowns. Don't hold anything. Be aware of those cooldowns, and if you need an add-on to help track your cooldowns, get an add-on to help track your cooldowns. Weak auras to help track your cooldowns. Something like that is going to be very effective at making sure you're able to track your cooldowns. If you don't have any, you can join our Discord. There's a link in my About section. There is a channel in the Discord filled with weak auras and add-ons that will help you maximize your gameplay if you're new to Arcane and trying to improve. I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you have a great day and enjoy the video. Of course, any questions, pop it down in the comments below.